All right, today we're cracking the code on one of history's greatest puzzles. We're talking about an artifact that literally gave a voice back to an entire civilization, the Rosetta Stone.
So here's a question for you. How do you read a language that's been silent for 1,500 years? I mean, just imagine it. An entire civilization's knowledge, all its stories, its beliefs, all of it is locked away behind a script that nobody on Earth can read. For centuries, that was the reality for ancient Egypt. Think about it. Those incredible monuments of the pharaohs, they all stood silent. Scholars and travelers could see these beautiful, super intricate hieroglyphs carved into literally every temple and tomb. But what did they mean? Nobody knew. It was a complete mystery. The key to understanding an entire world was just gone. And the scale of this silence? It's just staggering. The last time we know anyone carved a hieroglyphic inscription was way back in 394 AD. After that, nothing. Just silence. For over 1,300 years, that's a long time, the language of the pharaohs was a complete blank. It's like the voice of an entire civilization had simply vanished into thin air. But then, everything changed. And it was all thanks to a stroke of just incredible luck. You'd think some grand, planned archaeological expedition found the key, right? Nope. It was a soldier. And it was a complete and total accident. So picture this. It's July 1799. Napoleon's army is in Egypt. A French officer, Pierre-François Bouchard, is supervising his men as they're tearing down an old wall. And there, embedded in the rubble, he spots this slab of dark stone. But what made him stop and take a closer look was the writing. He could see right away it wasn't just one inscription. It had 3 totally different kinds of script on it. And this was the monumental find. This was the game changer. Why? Because the stone had the exact same message written out in 3 different scripts. At the top, you had the formal, sacred hieroglyphs, the so-called language of the gods. In the middle was Demotic, which was the common, everyday script. And at the bottom, ancient Greek, a language that scholars in 1799 could actually read. All of a sudden, they had a key. The potential was, well, it was obvious to everyone. So what exactly is this thing? Well, the Rosetta Stone is actually just a fragment of a much bigger stone slab called a stele. And the text on it is a decree from all the way back in 196 BC. It's basically a public announcement for the new king, Ptolemy V. You could almost think of it as a piece of royal PR carved in stone and ordered to be put up in every temple in Egypt. As you can imagine, the discovery of this stone set off an absolute intellectual firestorm across Europe. It kicked off this incredible, high-stakes race to be the first to crack the code. It turned into a fierce competition, really, between some of the greatest minds of the era. Now, cracking this thing wasn't one single aha moment. It was more like a relay race, a series of crucial breakthroughs where scholars built on each other's work. First, back in 1802, a couple of scholars figured out how to identify foreign names in the Demotic script by matching them to the Greek. Then in 1814, an English genius, Thomas Young, made a huge leap forward. He realized the hieroglyphs weren't just pictures, they were also partly phonetic. But the final winning leg of this race, that would be run by a brilliant French scholar. And that brings us to the hero of our story, Jean-François Champollion. This guy was absolutely obsessed with Egypt, right from when he was a little kid. He basically dedicated his entire life to solving this one single challenge. So how did he do it? His method was this brilliant mix of pure logic and detective work. First, he focused on those oval shapes you see, called cartouches. Everyone pretty much agreed those had to contain royal names. So he took the Greek name Ptolemaios from the stone and used it to figure out the phonetic sounds of the hieroglyphs that spelled it out. Okay, big step. But the real test came next. He took his brand new alphabet and tried it on a cartouche from a different monument, one that had the name Cleopatra. And it worked. The letters matched up. The final proof? He showed his system also worked for the names of older, native Egyptian pharaohs. And that was it. The code was officially broken. So what was Champollion's crucial insight? What did he see that everyone else missed? He realized that hieroglyphs weren't just simple pictures. It was a much more complex and frankly beautiful system. It mixed phonetic characters, symbols that represent sounds like our alphabet, with ideographic symbols, which are pictures that represent whole ideas. So a picture of an owl could mean the sound M, but it could also just mean an owl. That dual nature was the key that had eluded everyone for centuries. But you see, this story doesn't end there with the code being cracked.
This stone's modern legacy is, in a lot of ways, just as complicated and fascinating as the ancient script carved onto it.
Okay, so what happened to the stone itself? Well, after the British captured it from the French in 1801, it was taken to London. And today it sits in the British Museum. And get this, it is the single most visited object in their entire massive collection. It's become a true global icon. Of course, its location in London is, well, it's a huge source of controversy. Egypt has formally requested its return, and for good reason. They see it as a core piece of their national identity. The counter-argument, laid out in a statement from the British Museum and others back in 2002, is basically that these objects were acquired in a very different time, with different values, and that these big, universal museums exist to serve everyone from every nation. And the stone's cultural power is just so immense that its name, Rosetta Stone, has become a part of our everyday language. It's a metaphor, right? You hear people talk about the Rosetta Stone of immunology or the Rosetta Stone of modern physics. Anytime you hear that, it just means the essential clue, the one key that unlocks a really deep and complex mystery. So when you think about it, the journey of this one single object is just wild. It tells the story of an ancient Egyptian king. It was found by French soldiers. It was deciphered by a Frenchman who built on the work of an Englishman. And now it sits in a British museum, where it's visited by millions of people from all over the globe. It all really boils down to this one fundamental question. When does an artifact's story stop belonging to just one nation and start belonging to the entire world?